Could the Sharks beat this year's Flames and make a run at the playoffs?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at The Reef, my blog about the San Jose Sharks with a focus on the prospects. Also co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do, just follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be examining the best case scenarios of this season for your San Jose Sharks. We did the worst case yesterday, what the worst possible scenarios other than injury, et cetera, et cetera. Today, we're going to be focusing on the best case possible, like realistic scenarios, where we're going to be talking about if the Sharks can make a Flames-like run this year, where they flirt with a wild card spot. We're going to talk about if Celebrini and Smith can go nuclear, and if the veterans, guys that the Sharks brought in, the 5,000 games experience, if they can make a massive impact. So let's start with the potential run at a playoff spot. And again, like these are the absolute like best case scenarios, I think, of what could happen with the Sharks, right? And I've made my case pretty clear all summer where I think the Sharks are going to be. I think they're going to kind of finish in that 5 through 10 spot when it comes to the draft order. I don't think they're going to be the worst team in the NHL. I think you're going to see some marketable improvements behind guys like Askarov, who's going to hopefully shore up the goaltending, and Celebrini and Smith and all the younger players take a big step. But what if Askarov is better than advertised, right? We talked about yesterday, what if he's just not the guy? And today, what if he's better than advertised and he is this year's Dustin Wolf? Right? A guy who outperforms expectations, basically puts a team on his back, and down the stretch run nearly drags them kicking and screaming into the playoffs. And who knows, most likely the Flames would have gotten in the playoffs and they probably would have lost in the first round, right? I think they would have taken the Blues spot and they would have played the Jets in the first round. And right, most likely they probably would have gotten, lost to the Jets, but still, we as Sharks fans, right, we haven't had a playoff hockey for the Sharks since 2019. Like, it would be a really fun story with a really fun young core, and kind of shows like maybe this team is going to be better than expected, much sooner than expected. So what would that kind of look like, right? If the Sharks were to kind of go on a Flames-like run. And I think it does, like I said, it starts with Askarov. Askarov would have to be one of the 10 best goalies in the league right off the bat, right? And you look at what Dustin Wolf did last year. Dustin Wolf was he was 21st in the NHL when it came to goals saved above expected. He, in 53 games last year, Dustin Wolf saved about 12 goals more than expected. Keeping in mind, I think the quality of the Sharks defense compared to the Flames, and it's not like the Flames have some, like, this isn't Vegas in their prime. This isn't like, Florida's defense. Like, this is not some like, massive defense, like, but still better, I think, than what San Jose is kind of expecting to trot out this year. So you're going to have to kind of overcome that. So if he's let's say if Askarov is a 55 game starter and he's in that like 20 goals saved above expected in that time, that would easily put him kind of in the top 10 when it comes to goals saved above expected. If his save percentages in that 9-10 range, like, he is just like the dude. Like, what we saw from Askarov in the AHL is basically the same guy in the NHL, right? Where he starts his career like the season with like a shutout right away. You just see Askarov just kind of take his game to the next level in the NHL. That's going to be, I think, the biggest factor for San Jose and kind of what the ceiling of this team could be. If Askarov is just that guy from day one, then you could maybe talk about it, right? Because I mean, this Flames team, like the offense was not good. They were just above the Sharks when it came to goals for. The Sharks had 210 goals for last year. The Flames were at 225, but the big difference was the goals allowed, where the Sharks were 315 goals allowed. The Flames were at 238. So if the Sharks can somehow manage to get the goals allowed from being the absolute worst in the NHL and that goal differential at minus 105 down to in the teens, if they have a negative goal differential in the teens, then you're probably looking at this team making a run, like at least being in the mix for a wild card spot come trade deadline. And I do think that is your like highest ceiling, I think, for this season, right? And again, trying to be somewhat realistic here. And I think this is still very, very like out there but there is a plausible path for it to happen, right? And it's just Askarov being ridiculous, just ridiculous from day one, being the guy, being a top 10 goalie, and kind of proving why you sent a first round pick and you sent, a first round prospect and David Edstrom, and you kind of let him marinate for a season, and you got some veteran defensemen to kind of improve the situation. And you hope that the offense does take a step, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But like to kind of follow the Flames formula, it's just you play a lot of all those like 1-goal losses that the Sharks had last year, right? Or all those games where the Sharks were leading by 1 going into the third period that they eventually lost. Like if you won like 2/3 of those, that's because of Askarov, right? Askarov making timely saves, the Sharks not getting hemmed in their own zone repeatedly, but mainly just Askarov hanging in there. And as I like to tweet, when Askarov was hanging in there last year, right? The hanging from the cat meme from a poster from The Simpsons, that hang in there baby, with Askarov's face. That's basically the Sharks season in a nutshell. It's just Askarov hanging in there, making the Sharks way more competitive than we thought they would be, getting timely goals from Celebrini, from Smith, from Macklin, from Toffoli, from these guys. And, maybe the offense doesn't take a massive jump, but it would have to take a jump. Like you'd have to be, again, like in that Flames formula, like you got to be like mid 20s ish when it comes to the rankings. So again, like that 200, that mid 20s ish when it comes to the rank goals for, you're 25, 26 in the NHL, which would be an improvement for the Sharks, right? Adding 30 goals would be a big improvement for the Sharks. And but I think if again, I don't see it happening. Just because I do think there will be some ups and downs for Askarov. Now, the following season, after Askarov has a full year under his belt, Celebrini and Smith in year 3, like then you can really talk me into it, right? And the Sharks have $1 bajillion in free agency that they start adding big time pieces, especially on the blue line, that are going to be here. Then you could talk me into it for the 26-27 season. But I do think that is like your absolute like dream scenario for San Jose this year, is that they do go on, a Flames like run, or they go on a Blue Jackets like run that we saw last year. And the Blue Jackets, actually, if you want to kind of look at how they did their run, in the for the league, is their offense, I think, kind of carried them much more than what we saw from. So their offense, they were one of the top 10 offenses in the NHL, and we'll kind of talk about that kind of a little bit more. But like they struggled when it came to kind of the goals allowed. Like they were still kind of near in the bottom 10 when it came to goals allowed, but their offense was so good last year that it overcame that. And that I don't know if the Sharks have the guns, like they don't have the horses for that quite yet, or the horses aren't ready to be released for that quite yet. But you can see that being kind of the future of the Sharks here, especially with all the assets they put up front. So we will talk about Celebrini and Smith going nuclear, and if that could be a pathway to kind of the future of the Sharks, of just this ridiculous offense that is always in the top 5, and we just see a taste of it this year. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. If you had Jalen Carter at 0 snaps, you're probably feeling pretty good about that bet right now. And if you had Javonte Williams scoring 2 touchdowns, probably feeling good about that bet as well. So great thing about FanDuel, it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, guys, before we continue, do, of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe. We are officially back to 5 episodes a week starting next week, even though you got 5 episodes this week anyway. So, yeah, we'll be back to 5 episodes a week. We have Rookie Face-Off next Friday. We're going to start gearing up, looking at all the training camp battles, all that fun stuff here next week. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And, of course, if you're not watching on YouTube, perfect place to watch as the road to 5,000 subscribers is on. So please subscribe. Helps me out a bunch. All right. The next kind of best case scenario for the Sharks, right? If they're not in a playoff race, I think is seeing Celebrini and Smith just go absolutely ham this season. And Michael Misa, Eklund, those guys as well. But we're going to focus on Celebrini and Smith because, right, we saw these two guys, and you saw especially we saw it from day one from Celebrini, right? Why he is such a special player and why he's going to be the foundational core piece of the San Jose Sharks in this next iteration of San Jose, right? We saw it last year as the youngest player in the NHL, just what he did on a night in, night out basis, just like affecting the game in all 3 zones, winning battle. Like you saw everything from Celebrini that just like made you smile. It was like that whole 23-24 season worth it. Worth the 10-2 loss and the 10-1 loss and the 8 like all those horrible losses got you one step closer to Macklin Celebrini, and Macklin Celebrini is well on his way to delivering. And like we've kind of talked about Celebrini and like kind of realistic expectations, and right now I think kind of being around that point per game player, right? If Celebrini's in the mid 70s, I think that's a successful season for him production wise, right? And if he's mid 30s goals, so he's 25 goals last year, he gets up into like the mid 30s, maybe he's pushing for 40 goals. Like those feel like real. They're high expectations, I'm not going to lie, but they feel realistic from what we saw from San Jose last year, right? And we've talked about kind of the improved middle 6 with guys like Jeff Skinner, William Eklund continue his growth. If Will Smith can kind of take a hold of that 2C job, if Michael Misa can get up to speed quickly, like there's a lot of options for this team to really start to see the offense click, right? And again, I think a realistic bump for this offense would be a kind of like the 20th offense in the NHL, going from dead last 32 to about 20th in the NHL would be a very nice progressive, like a very nice step for this offense, especially with all the pieces they have up front. What if they go nuts? What if Celebrini's like a 90-point player, right? What if Will Smith is close to a point per game player? What if Macklin is close to a point per game player? What if the power play, which was woeful at times last year, right? What if now this power play, which is going to see a lot of the same pieces coming back, right? Toffoli, Macklin, Smith, Celebrini, and then John Klingberg, who, say what you want about John Klingberg. John Klingberg can run a power play. It's gonna be it's gonna be the best offensive defenseman we've had on the power plays since Erik Karlsson. Like the Sharks have been wandering the desert the past couple of years trying to find a power play quarterback. What if the power play is like good? Like not one of the worst power plays in the NHL, which it had its moments, right? It definitely had its moments. But this power play was nowhere near what you kind of expected it to be, especially with all the talent, right? The power play last year finished 26th at 18.6%. It was actually a small step back compared to the year before. What if the power play grows in leaps and bounds and it's like a top 15 unit, flirting with a top 10 unit because of these players that you have on it, like all these guys, and then this chemistry. And then you see that's how you go from a Celebrini potentially, high 70s points season to 90 points, right? And that's how you see Will Smith go from a 45-point season projecting to, 60s, 70s point to a point per game season, right? And you see Macklin and you see all these other guys continue their growth because now they have a group who's been together for 2 years, and the chemistry continues to grow, and the system is like, you're not kind of trying to learn a new system, and you're not having new people on the back end all the time. Like that right there, I think, is the key. Is the power play really ignites, and then this offense, which was the worst offense in the NHL, then you're talking about a top 15 unit, a middle of the pack unit instead of jumping up, and you're dragging everybody with you, right? And then what if Misa comes in and doesn't need the runway that you needed with Will Smith, where it takes half a season for him to kind of really find his groove and then become the player that we're expecting Will Smith? What if Misa's rolling by Thanksgiving and he's a top 6 forward by Thanksgiving? And then you have like 3 lines that you could really feel good about between, Skinner, Misa, Will Smith. You have Macklin, Celebrini, Toffoli, Wenberg, like there's then you like a real 3-line team. And yes, again, a lot of wish casting here. But I think if the Sharks power play takes a massive step this year, then you see that. I think it's because of Celebrini and Smith getting more opportunities on the power and cashing in on those opportunities. And then they continue their growth at 5-on-5, and the Sharks aren't spending so much time in their own zone. And that does help a guy like Askarov in this defense, right? Where there's my defense is for nerds, go score goals. The best way to play defense is not have to play defense at all. And the Sharks get into a more offensive oriented game where they are able to control the puck more, score more goals, and take pressure off their defense, which is a little bit patchwork, right? We know that's a little bit patchwork this season. Again, expecting improvements, but still a lot of new pieces, a lot of new names. And you have a young goalie in Askarov, and then, Alexander Nedeljkovic coming over. What if the offense takes control and you see this team start to form into the offensive juggernaut that I hope they become? Because as much as defense wins champions and stuff, you still got to score goals, right? And you see it in the playoffs where goals become a premium, right? You can't win every game 2-1, and you need players to score goals. Let's let's see. We want to see the Ferrari start to warm up here, right, and start to kind of rev up a little bit here. And as I think that would be, I think if the Sharks don't make a playoff run, seeing the offense really start to click and come into form, and especially on the power play, where again you're expecting all these like Macklin, Celebrini, Misa, Smith. These guys are going to be here for a long, long time. Like, you remember when the Sharks power play was just like Thornton, Marlowe, Pavelski, like they just ran like Couture. They just ran out the same like 4 dudes with Brent Burns on the back for like 5 years straight. We could be getting back into that era, or it's just like we're just going to run out the same guys. You know exactly what we're going to do, and there's nothing you could do about it. So that's the hope. That's the best, one of the best case scenarios. So finally, we're going to talk about the veterans, Orlov, Skinner, some of these guys kind of refining their games, and why this would be another best case scenario. Or again, maybe it doesn't help out as much of the wins and losses, but you're still trying to gather assets like Mike Grier is doing. These guys refining their game would be massive, massive pieces. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. Guys, I'm super excited to tell you about my new favorite jeanswear brand, Duer. I've been living in their performance denim straight jeans, and honestly, they've completely changed the game for me. The best part, Duer just opened a brand new store right here in Hayes Valley, and let me tell you, you're going to want to stop by. I've been wearing Duer jeans to work. They look great. Like, that's the most important thing, right? They look great. 2, they feel great as well. They have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim, so you get the perfect fit without feeling restricted. They're antibacterial, which means you can stay fresh longer, so you can wear them more without having to wash them as much. And the Cool Max technology regulates your temperature and wicks away moisture, perfect for those unpredictable Bay Area days, right? You're in San Francisco, it's 50 degrees. You go down to San Jose, it's 90 degrees. They got you covered. So Duer combines the classic jeanswear style with the comfort and performance of athletic wear, the best of both worlds. Once you try them, they'll be your go-to. Visit their new store that is now open at 567 Hayes Street in Hayes Valley, and mention my code LOCKEDONSF for 15% off your first order, or go shop online at shopduer.com/LockedOnSF. That's DUER for 15% off. All right, before we finish up, I do, of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There's no off season, still pumping out 5 episodes a week for you, covering the daily league-wide stories that matter the most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Okay. Veterans refining their game, and specifically Jeff Skinner refining his game. When I know people are down on Jeff Skinner after last season, right, where he only scored, a handful of goals and stuff. And I think once Skinner starts playing top 6 minutes again, like I'm pretty confident in his ability to score goals. Like, the man has been scoring goals for a long time in his career on really bad Buffalo Sabres teams. I don't expect it to be any different for the San Jose Sharks, right? And a guy who's on a very cheap $3 million contract, who could turn, if Skinner's like a 20-goal scorer by the time the trade deadline hits and the Sharks are out of the playoff picture as we expect, Skinner might get you a really nice pick back. And I think that's the big thing, right, is having some of these veterans who refine their game, who can turn into assets for you as Mike Grier continues to build this bad boy, right? And, we're going to have to sign, it would be nice to re-sign some of these guys. And if, guys really fit in here and play well and look like they can contribute for the next couple seasons, like, I'm totally for re-signing some of these guys. And that would be a great outcome too, because then you have less holes you have to fill going into the off season, right? And you're not like, Mike, we got to do something here, right? You got to find some defensemen, and the market gets picked over the day before the free agency starts because everyone just goes back to the original teams. Would be nice to, again, trying to find more answers for the Sharks than you have questions for. I think it's going to be a big theme for the season this year, finding those answers. But a guy like Jeff Skinner, right? If Skinner can get back to being a 25 goal scorer for you, because he's playing on top 6 minutes, right? And not only playing those top, but like playing well in those minutes and contributing in those minutes. Like very clear path, I think, for Skinner to do that. Klingberg is another guy who we talked about a little bit earlier, but a guy who's struggled with injuries the past couple seasons, but like looked pretty solid for the Oilers last year, granted end of the season and in the playoffs and limited minutes, and he's going to probably play bigger minutes for the Sharks. I think it's fair to say he's going to have a bigger role with San Jose. And another guy who's in that kind of reestablish his value and then look to see to maybe be a trade piece. But again, if he plays well, I would be more than happy to re-sign him to a couple, 1 or 2 year deal, especially because it doesn't feel like the Sharks have a lot of defensemen kind of knocking down the door to, make the team, right? And again, we've gone over a million times. They have one defenseman signed for next year. As Dmitry Orlov's on the team, and while we expect Mikko Dolan to be back, and either Ferraro or Liljegren or both to be back, and Luca Cagnoni maybe is hopefully pushing for an NHL job, and Sam Dickinson's pushing as an NHLer next year, but still then all those guys are going to bring their own questions because of their experience, especially Dickinson and Cagnoni. Can they hold up in a full season? How do they play in a full season? It would just be nice to have some more answers for the Sharks. Or, like I said, if Klingberg plays well, and then how often are teams looking for right-handed defensemen who can move the puck and create offense? Right? It's that, and it's middle six centers are the two things that the teams are looking for at the trade deadline. And the Sharks might have an opportunity to have both available between John Klingberg and a guy like Alex Wenberg, who could, if the Sharks are out of it, those guys could fetch you some nice pieces going into what's supposed to be a much deeper 2026 draft. And again, Mike Grier, does he make those picks or does he trade him for a young player? Whatever it is, right? We'll have plenty of time to discuss that. Even a guy like Philip Kurashev kind of trying to reestablish his brand, not because, as much of a veteran, but a guy who's kind of established here and has had some really nice moments and really kind of took a step back. If a guy like that can reestablish his brand, and maybe a guy who's probably not a long-term fit here because of some of the other wingers coming up with Chernyshov and Musty, and Cam Lund and some of the other players who are going to be, again, pushing for NHL jobs here soon. If Kurashev finds his game and is able to, play well and kind of, especially on a third line role, and then all of a sudden, a team looking for more scoring and Kurashev can do a little bit of everything, he could be another potential piece where the Sharks could look to trade off this season. Or so I think kind of the most realistic, again, I kind of did this like I did yesterday, right? Where the most realistic, or the case like yesterday, was the thing I'm least worried about because I think it's most likely going to happen. This is the one where I think it's most likely going to happen is some of these veterans are going to refine their game because of, play time or their roles expanded or whatever it is. And Mike Grier is going to have some decisions to make on whether to keep these guys and let this team continue to build and grow, or to kind of cash in and on if guys are maybe at their highest value. And again, add to that war chest, a war chest which continues to restock itself as the Sharks, again, are going to go into next draft with right now they're scheduled in the 2026 draft with 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks, no third-round picks, because I love how Mike Grier just trades away every third-round pick. It's my favorite thing. And then 2 fourth-round picks. If Grier wants to try to add a 2027 for another first-round pick or 2027, so the Sharks are going to be able to do, continue to restock this war supply. And hopefully the hope is he starts to consolidate some of those picks and assets to get some players who are going to be big time contributors for you sooner rather than later. So anyway, like I said, I think the most I don't want to say realistic, but still best case scenario is if the Sharks do make a Flames type run this season, because of Askarov is just so freaking good. And there's a world where Askarov is just so freaking good, because I do think Askarov is going to be really, really good. I do think he is eventually going to be a top 10 goalie in this league. But if he's a top 10 goalie from day one, okay, we can maybe start to think about the Sharks going on a surprise wild card run. Not saying they'll get in, but it'd be super fun to every game having that do or die mentality down the stretch. So, and if Celebrini and Smith and the power play really jump in the next level, again, not saying it's going to happen. I think it's more baby steps, right? Like I've said, but there's a world where those guys are just too good to stop. So, but anyway, that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back next week as we start to kind of get ramp up for training camp. We're going to start looking at some of the big training camp battles, start getting ready for the rookie face-off that's next weekend. So make sure you follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on TikTok. Cosmo Man, Cowabunga Dudes. Follow me on Twitter and on Twitter and Blue Sky at my fry hole. Until Monday. Bye, friends.